Life inside the White House is often imagined as a dream: elegant dinners, historic halls, and moments of prestige. But the truth is far more profound. The White House is not just a home, it is the heartbeat of a nation, a place where every decision echoes across the world, and where every day demands strength, sacrifice, and resilience. When I share with you what it truly means to live within those walls, I want you to listen not just with curiosity, but with an open heart. Because behind the grandeur lies a reality that few ever see: the late nights when duty outweighs rest, sacrifices families make for a greater purpose, and the quiet strength it takes to live in a place where history is written with every passing moment. This isn't just about politics or power, it's about responsibility, family, influence, and legacy. It's about understanding that life in the White House is not a privilege alone. It is a calling, one that demands you to give more of yourself than you ever imagined. Stay with me through this journey, because what I share today will not only open a window into life inside the White House, it will also reveal timeless lessons about leadership, resilience, and the power of service. By the end, you will see that life there is not only about the people who enter its doors, it is about every citizen whose hopes and dreams it represents. When people imagine life inside the White House, they often think first of its beauty, its historic halls, and the way it shines as a symbol of American strength. But what very few realize is that stepping inside those walls, living there day after day, changes the way you see everything. The White House is not just a residence. It is a constant reminder of the responsibility you carry, not just to those closest to you, but to an entire nation. Every sound in the halls, every meeting behind closed doors, every phone call that comes in at midnight is a reminder that the work never truly stops. Responsibility in the White House is not something you can put down at the end of the day, or walk away from when you feel tired. It surrounds you. It follows you into every dinner conversation, every walk through the gardens, every quiet moment when you think you finally have a chance to breathe. It doesn't matter what you planned, what you hoped, or how much rest you thought you'd get. The responsibility is always there, pressing, demanding, reminding you that millions of lives are touched by the decisions made inside that home. There is a weight to that, a gravity that can never be ignored. And the truth is, that weight makes you stronger. It forces you to grow in ways you never thought possible. You learn to discipline yourself, to focus, to prioritize, to stay calm when the world is shouting. Because you cannot let the pressure of that responsibility consume you, you must carry it with steadiness, with clarity, and with the understanding that leadership is never about you. It's about the people who trust you. When you live in the White House, you realize quickly that the smallest details can matter more than you ever imagined. A single sentence spoken in the wrong way can change the course of a conversation. A gesture that seems insignificant to you might be analyzed by the world. Every expression, every action is magnified because the White House is not just a backdrop. It is the stage on which history is being written. That understanding makes you careful, thoughtful, and deeply aware that responsibility is not measured only in decisions, but also in the example you set. You carry not just your own name, but the weight of a legacy, the reputation of a nation, and the hopes of countless people who look to the White House as a symbol of stability, of possibility, and of leadership. And that is why responsibility inside those walls cannot be taken lightly. You cannot allow yourself to be careless, because carelessness has consequences that ripple far beyond what you can see. It is humbling, and at times overwhelming, to realize that responsibility in the White House is not something you choose when it's convenient. It is something you accept every moment, whether you feel ready or not. There are no breaks, no days off, no way to separate your personal life from the larger mission. Even in moments of joy, even in private celebrations, There is always that awareness that duty stands at the door, waiting to call you back. But with that weight also comes an incredible sense of purpose. When you live inside those walls, you cannot escape the reminder that your time there is not for yourself. It is for others. It is for the families across the country who trust that leadership will serve them with honesty and courage. It is for the children who look to the White House as a symbol of what is possible for their own futures. It is for the generations who will study this time and ask whether those who carried responsibility did so with wisdom, with strength, and with heart. Responsibility, when lived inside the White House, teaches you something profound about sacrifice. You learn quickly that your comfort cannot come first. Your privacy is limited, your freedom is restricted, and your choices are often shaped by obligations that cannot be ignored. And yet, in those sacrifices, you discover a different kind of fulfillment. You realize that responsibility is not a burden to resist. It is an opportunity to serve, to give, to rise above what you thought you were capable of, and to carry a weight that others cannot. That weight changes you. It makes you more resilient. It makes you more aware of the fragility of life, the importance of values, the necessity of strength. You see the world differently because responsibility forces you to look beyond yourself, beyond your own needs, and to measure everything through the lens of what is right, what is best, what is necessary in that moment for the greater good. Of course, there are moments when the weight feels heavy, almost unbearable. When decisions must be made quickly, when criticism comes from every direction, when the pressure mounts and the world demands answers, in those moments you learn the true meaning of composure. You learn to stand steady, to breathe deeply, to focus not on the noise, but on the clarity of what must be done. Because in the White House, hesitation can mean missed opportunities, and weakness can mean lost trust. Responsibility demands that you remain centered no matter the storm, and with time you begin to see that the weight of responsibility is not only a challenge, it is also a privilege, because not everyone is given the chance to live in a place where history is shaped. Not everyone has the opportunity to influence decisions that affect millions of lives. To carry that responsibility is to carry an honor, one that is larger than yourself, one that will remain long after you have left those walls. That awareness fills you with gratitude even in the most difficult moments, because you understand that responsibility is not a punishment. It is a gift, a chance to serve in the highest way possible. When you live in the White House, you learn that responsibility is not just about leadership at the highest level. It is also about personal integrity. How you treat people matters. How you respect those around you matters. The responsibility to uphold dignity, to listen, to act with compassion, becomes just as important as the larger decisions being made, because in the end, responsibility is not measured only in policies or actions. It is measured in the lives touched, the hearts inspired, and the trust either strengthened or broken. There is no guidebook that prepares you fully for the responsibility of living in the White House. You learn through experience, through trial and error, through moments of triumph and moments of difficulty. You learn by being present, by listening, by reminding yourself daily that this responsibility is never about personal gain, but about service. And you come to understand that carrying the weight is not something you do alone. You carry it with the support of family, of advisors, of countless people who dedicate themselves to the same mission of serving this country. What responsibility inside the White House teaches you more than anything else is that true leadership is not about comfort. It is about courage. It is about standing tall when the weight is heavy, about making choices when the answers are unclear, about carrying yourself with strength when the world is watching. It is about knowing that responsibility will test you, stretch you, challenge you, but it will also shape you into someone capable of far more than you ever imagined. That is the weight of responsibility in the White House. It is unending, it is demanding, and it is profound. But it is also the reason why the White House remains not just a residence, but a symbol of resilience and hope for the nation. And it is in carrying that responsibility with honor and strength that we find the true meaning of service. When people see the White House from the outside, they see beauty, history, and a symbol that belongs not only to a family, but to an entire nation. It shines with a sense of grandeur that makes it appear larger than life, almost untouchable. And while it is true that living there is unlike anything else, what many forget is that behind those walls lies a world of sacrifice, a life lived in service, where personal choices are often set aside for duty, where moments that might seem ordinary in another household become rare, and where the definition of normal is forever changed. Sacrifice begins with privacy. The White House is filled with constant movement, constant attention, and constant watchfulness. Every hallway, every room is alive with activity. Staff, security, advisors, reporters, everywhere you turn, there are eyes, there are ears, there is awareness. And while that is necessary, while it ensures that the work of the nation is carried out smoothly, it also means that personal space becomes limited, almost non-existent. The simple act of stepping outside for a walk or sitting quietly in the garden is rarely just yours. It is a moment surrounded by others, protected, monitored, and sometimes interrupted. Privacy, the kind that allows you to simply be unseen and unguarded, is one of the first things that must be sacrificed. And then there is time. Time is no longer your own. Schedules in the White House are built not around personal desires, but around duty. Events, meetings, briefings, ceremonies, they fill the days and spill into the nights. Plans shift in a moment's notice. A dinner planned weeks in advance might be canceled in seconds because a crisis has emerged, or a situation requires immediate attention. Family birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, those moments that most people protect with all their hearts, can be reshaped or overshadowed by obligations to the country. And while those occasions can still be celebrated, they are celebrated differently, with the awareness that duty is always waiting at the door. That is perhaps the greatest sacrifice of all, the way family life is altered inside the White House. For children, it means growing up in a world where every step is watched, where playing outside is never truly private, where friends visit under the gaze of security, and where moments that should feel simple are layered with a seriousness that is hard to escape. For spouses, it means sharing time with a nation, knowing that personal needs often come second, knowing that even the most intimate conversations may be interrupted by the urgency of leadership. And for the entire family, it means learning to adapt, to find joy in the small moments that can be protected, and to accept that sacrifice is not temporary. It is part of the life you choose when you enter those gates. Sacrifice inside the White House is not just about what is lost, but about the constant awareness of responsibility. You learn to carry yourself differently, to move through your day knowing that your actions represent more than yourself. Even casual choices, where you go, what you say, how you appear, carry weight. There is little room for spontaneity, because spontaneity must be measured against security, against perception, against the ripple effect that a single action might create. That sacrifice of freedom is one that few think about. Yet it is present every moment of every day. And yet, in that sacrifice, there is also strength. Families who live in the White House learn resilience in ways that others cannot imagine. They learn to create new traditions, to find laughter in quiet moments, to support one another when the outside world feels overwhelming. They learn that sacrifice is not only about giving up. It is about gaining perspective, about understanding that life inside those walls is not about what you keep for yourself, but about what you are willing to give for the sake of something greater. There are sacrifices that are invisible to the outside world, the kind that weigh heavily on the heart. The sacrifices of friendships that shift, because trust becomes fragile when you are living at the center of attention. The sacrifices of missed moments, when you wish you could be fully present, but know that your mind is pulled back toward duty. The sacrifices of carrying burdens that cannot be spoken, secrets that cannot be shared, pressures that cannot be explained. Those are the sacrifices that shape you quietly, that remind you that service is never easy, that the cost of leadership is real and often personal. But perhaps the most profound sacrifice is learning to put the nation above yourself. That lesson is not just symbolic, it is lived every day. It means waking up with the knowledge that decisions made inside those walls will affect millions, and that personal desires cannot outweigh the needs of the people. It means making peace with the reality that your life is not fully your own, because it belongs in some way to the country. That is a sacrifice that demands humility, strength, and the willingness to accept that your role is not to be served but to serve. Sacrifice, in the end, is what gives the White House its meaning. Without sacrifice, the role would be hollow, reduced to symbols and appearances. It is sacrifice that fills the halls with purpose, that makes the long hours worthwhile, that transforms personal challenges into shared victories. And though the sacrifices are real, though they are often heavy, they also create a legacy that lasts beyond your time there. Because when you live in the White House, you are not remembered for what you kept for yourself. You are remembered for what you gave. And so, while life inside the White House is filled with beauty, privilege, and history, it is also defined by sacrifice. It asks more of you than you expect. It demands patience, resilience, and grace. It requires you to let go of certain freedoms so that others may live with greater ones. And it teaches you every single day that the greatest measure of leadership is not found in what you gain, but in what you are willing to give away. That is the truth of life in the White House. It is not sustained by power or prestige, but by sacrifice. When you walk through the halls of the White House, you feel something that is almost impossible to describe. It is not only the weight of history, though that is present in every portrait and every room. It is also the realization that what happens inside those walls reaches far beyond them. Conversations held in private offices, dinners shared with leaders, speeches delivered from the East Room. All of it carries influence that extends to every corner of the world. Living in the White House is not just about adapting to a life of responsibility or sacrifice. It is about understanding the extraordinary power of influence that comes with it. That influence is not limited to politics. It stretches across culture, diplomacy, and even the way people imagine their own futures. When the White House speaks, people listen. When the White House hosts, people watch. And when the White House acts, the ripple effect is felt globally. To live there is to see firsthand how a single moment, a single word, a single gesture can shift the way people think, the way they feel, and the way they believe in what is possible. Influence is a subtle kind of power, and it is easy to underestimate until you are immersed in it. You realize that every gathering carries meaning. A dinner might seem like a social event, but it is also a chance to strengthen alliances, to build trust, to create understanding between nations. A simple conversation in a hallway can open doors to possibilities that will later shape policies. Even the art chosen for the walls or the music played at an event becomes part of the message, part of the story that the White House tells to the world. Influence lives in those details, in the way moments are crafted, in the way people feel when they leave those gates. But influence also requires careful stewardship, because while it has the power to inspire, it also has the potential to divide. The White House must constantly balance not only what it does, but how it does it. Influence cannot be wielded recklessly. It must be measured, thoughtful, rooted in values. When you live in the White House, you learn quickly that influence is not about using your voice the loudest. It is about choosing when to speak, how to act, and what message will carry the most. Truth, there are moments when the influence of the White House is most visible: state visits, national addresses, historic agreements. But there are also quieter moments, moments that the world may never see, where influence is just as powerful. A private reassurance to a grieving family, a gesture of kindness to a child, a word of encouragement to someone who feels unseen. Those moments may not make headlines, but they leave lasting impressions. They remind you that influence is not just about shaping nations, but about touching individual lives. And in many ways, it is those private moments of influence that reveal the truest heart of leadership. Living in the White House teaches you that influence is not only about what is said or done, but about what is symbolized. People look to the White House for hope. They see it as a reflection of what America stands for, what it believes in, and what it strives to become. That symbolism carries an enormous weight, because it shapes not only how people feel about their leaders, but how they feel about themselves. When people see strength, they feel stronger. When they see compassion, they feel more connected. When they see unity, they feel less divided. Influence is not abstract, it is deeply personal, and it shapes the spirit of the nation in ways that can never be underestimated. There is also the influence that extends beyond borders. The White House does not stand only for the United States, it stands as a symbol for the entire world. Other nations look to it, watch it, measure it. A word spoken from within its walls can calm tensions or escalate them, can build bridges or create distance. A gesture of respect can open the door to peace. A lack of it can close that door for generations. That global influence is humbling, because it reminds you that the White House is not only a house for one family or even one country. It is a beacon whose light reaches across oceans. But influence also demands humility. It demands the recognition that people are watching not because of who you are as an individual, but because of what you represent. It is not personal, it is symbolic. And when you understand that, you realize that influence is not a privilege to be used for self, but a responsibility to be carried with care. Every decision, every statement, every image must reflect not only the truth of the moment, but the values you wish to project. Of course, there are challenges. Influence is not always used fairly. Sometimes it is misunderstood, sometimes it is twisted, sometimes it is criticized. And that is part of living in the White House, knowing that influence is powerful, but also fragile. It can be questioned, doubted, even rejected. That is why it must be built carefully, consistently, authentically, because true influence is not earned in a single moment. It is earned over time through integrity, through steadiness, through the kind of leadership that withstands scrutiny. Influence in the White House is also deeply connected to legacy. The actions taken, the choices made, the words spoken. They do not fade quickly. They become part of history, studied and remembered long after the moment has passed. That awareness is sobering because it reminds you that influence is not temporary. It is written into the story of the nation. It will outlast the time spent within those walls. And that means the way influence is used is not only about the present, it is about the future. It is about shaping what generations will inherit, what lessons they will learn, and what kind of leaders they will strive to become. Perhaps one of the most important lessons about influence is that it is not only about projecting strength, it is also about listening. Influence is not just top, down, it flows in both directions. The White House has influence over the people, but the people also have influence over the White House. Their voices, their hopes, their struggles shape what happens inside those gates, and when leaders truly listen, they allow the influence of the people to shape the decisions of the nation. That balance is what makes influence meaningful. It is not only about leading, it is about connecting, about ensuring that influence is not distant, but deeply rooted in the lives it touches. Living in the White House means living in a place where influence is inescapable. You feel it in the way people look at you, in the way they react to your words, in the way they search for meaning in even the smallest gestures. It can be daunting, it can be exhausting, but it is also inspiring, because it reminds you every day that you have the chance to shape not only what people believe about their leaders, but what they believe about themselves. And when influence is used with integrity, with compassion, with courage, it can move people toward hope, toward unity, toward possibility. That is the power of influence in the White House. It is vast, it is profound, and it is lasting. And it is in how that influence is carried, shaped, and shared that the true spirit of leadership is revealed. Life inside the White House, for all its history, its grandeur, and its influence, is ultimately a deeply human experience. It is easy to see it as a place only defined by politics, power, and responsibility. But what is less visible to the outside world is how life within those walls shapes a family. It is in those moments, quiet dinners, walks in the garden, conversations late at night, that you come to understand that resilience and unity are not luxuries in the White House, they are necessities. And it is through the bond of family that those who live there find the strength to carry forward, even in the most difficult times. The White House is a home, but it is a home unlike any other. It is filled with staff, security, constant schedules, and eyes that are always watching. Children grow up surrounded by a level of scrutiny that most adults could never imagine. Every movement, every friendship, every word spoken in public is magnified. They learn quickly that their lives are different, that the world is watching them, often with expectations that are far beyond their years. And yet, within that pressure, families find ways to create normalcy. They carve out moments that belong only to them, small rituals that keep them grounded. A game in the residence, a quiet breakfast before the day begins, laughter over something so ordinary it feels extraordinary simply because it remains untouched by duty. Resilience, in many ways, is the unspoken heartbeat of family life in the White House. It is what allows people to continue when days are long, when criticism is loud, when the demands feel endless. It is resilience that keeps the family standing together, even when the world outside feels divided. And resilience is not found in grand gestures. It is found in the everyday choices to show up for one another, to support one another, to believe in one another. Families in the White House learn to hold on tightly to each other because they know that beyond those walls, the world is waiting to pull them apart. There is also a unique kind of resilience that comes from adapting to constant change. Plans shift without warning, privacy vanishes without permission, and personal desires are often overshadowed by national needs. Families learn to bend without breaking, to accept that flexibility is not weakness but strength. They learn that their resilience is not about resisting the pressures of the White House, but about rising above them, about finding ways to grow closer in an environment that could so easily push them apart. But resilience alone is not enough. It must be paired with unity. The White House can be isolating. It can make you feel as though the whole world is watching, yet no one truly understands. That is why family becomes the anchor, the constant reminder that behind every speech, every event, every decision, there are people who love unconditionally, who know the person beyond the public image, who provide a safe space where it is possible to breathe. Without that unity, the pressures of the White House could overwhelm even the strongest individual. With it, those pressures become manageable because you know you are not carrying the weight alone. And yet, family in the White House is not just about supporting one another. It is also about the legacy you leave together. For the family that lives there, legacy is not a distant concept. It is something that is shaped daily through the choices you make, the example you set, the way you rise to challenges, and the way you treat those around you. Every moment contributes to that legacy, whether seen by millions or noticed only by a few. Legacy is in the way children grow up witnessing service and sacrifice, in the way they learn that leadership is not about privilege but about duty. Legacy is in the way families endure hardship with grace, in the way they hold their values steady even when tested. Living in the White House forces you to think constantly about the future. You know your time there is temporary. The years pass quickly, and the moments, while unforgettable, are fleeting, but what remains is the mark left behind, the lessons taught, the example set, the values upheld. That is the true legacy of life in the White House. It is not measured by titles or by power, but by the way a family carries itself, by the way it preserves its humanity in a place that can so easily strip it away. And legacy is not built only for those who live inside those walls. It is built for the nation that watches, for the citizens who look to the White House as a reflection of who they are and who they aspire to be. The way a family navigates life in the White House has the power to inspire other families, to show resilience in the face of challenge, to show unity in the face of division, to show that even under the brightest spotlight, love and strength can prevail. That is why legacy matters not just for the family within, but for the countless families beyond. It is impossible to speak about life in the White House without acknowledging that the legacy built there will outlast the individuals who lived it. Long after the residence has welcomed new families, long after the portraits have changed, the stories endure. Generations later, people will still talk about the sacrifices made, the choices taken, the examples set. That is why families living there are so mindful of every action. They understand that their legacy will not be erased, that it becomes part of the history of the nation itself. What life in the White House ultimately teaches is that family is the foundation, resilience is the strength, and legacy is the gift. Families are tested, but they endure. They are stretched, but they do not break. They are called to sacrifice, but they do so with the knowledge that what they are building is bigger than themselves. And when they finally leave those gates for the last time, they know that they have left behind not just memories, but a piece of themselves woven into the story of America. That is the reality of family, resilience, and legacy in the White House. It is not simple, it is not easy, but it is enduring. And it is in those truths that we see not only what it means to live in the White House, but what it means to live with purpose.